Did I just make a short film to show off me growing a mustache? Yes. Right, so moving on. Okay, so the fact that you have a mustache now isn't just why I made that film. It's part of it, and you should all tell me how much you love my mustache. But the full answer is actually I made that little film to showcase different camera angles and shots you can use in your videos to up the quality, to make them even better and to immerse your audience in even more ways. I basically used that little film to show you different camera angles and different shots that you can use to not only up the quality, but also to tell your story a completely different way. I also made this film to show you that there isn't just one way to tell a story. The way you decide to tell your story depends on your emotions, your memories, and your experiences. All these things come together and that's how your story is told. I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. Filmmaking is largely the exact same way. You have all these different ways of telling your story through the shots, through the writing, through the directing, and as the director, you get to choose how your story is told and how your audience will perceive the film. I used that little film in the beginning of this video to showcase some of those very camera angles. So by going through that whatever it was, and also adding some other camera angles that I didn't fit in that film, I'm gonna show you some camera angles that you can use to fundamentally improve your filmmaking for the better, changing how your audience perceives your film. Now, you have the basic camera angles like the wide shot, the medium shot, the close-up shot. Those are the ones that I'm sure you either already know or just by looking at them you can understand what they are. Then you get to the more advanced shots like the cowboy shot, the bird's eye view shot, the Dutch tilt. All of those shots you can understand just by Googling them, so I'm not here to talk about those. I'm gonna take you through camera angles and shots with hidden meanings behind them to subconsciously send your audience messages, literally change how they perceive the film. Starting off with this first one. So this is called the stranger POV shot, and this shot is really cool because when you do it the right way, it makes it look like you are literally spying on the character in your film. This shot is super simple. If you're doing this in a forest, then the way that you would accomplish this shot is by having your subject a good bit of distance in front of you and then having a tree in the foreground. Then you take your camera and then you shoot kind of in and out of the tree, weaving back and forth, putting your subject in and out of the shot. I used this shot in the mustache short film earlier, and that was absolutely the way to go. Because of the idea of the short film, you can tell that my character is being chased by someone. So by throwing in the stranger POV shot, you looked like the character, or you looked like the object that is chasing my character. It makes the audience feel like you're actually there spying on the character, and that really immerses you in the film, which is why it's such a cool shot. There aren't always ways to use this in your short film. However, when you do find a way, and when you do find a short film that you can use this shot in, you should absolutely go for it, because this really changes how your audience looks at that scene. This next shot I didn't use in that little film, however, it's still one of my favorites. It's called separation. It basically works by putting something in between one character and another character to show their emotional distance. This shot is so cool because it really shows your audience that the characters are separate in some way. Even if they're there in the shot, by putting them further away with something in between, it makes the audience feel like they're emotionally distant, and that's really what you want to convey in some shots. Next up is the use of negative space in your shot. I use that in the mustache shot right here, when I cut away to a super wide shot with a bunch of negative space all around the character. You can use empty space in your shot to symbolize a character's loneliness or insignificance. When you have a super wide shot and the character is really far away, you look like you're watching the character from that far away, and the character looks lonely because a lot of times, even if there are people there, with the camera that far back, they still look lonely in a lot of ways. This particular shot works because there was nobody else there. There was somebody alone in the woods, and by cutting away to a wide shot, it really showed, wow, he is super alone. One thing to note here that I kind of really liked about that little film is right here when it cuts from a bunch of stranger POV shots to the wide shot. It's honestly really jarring because you're going from a bunch of close-up tight shots to a super wide shot, so at first it kind of throws you off balance. However, I think that's really cool because there actually isn't anybody there, and you find that out when you cut to the wide shot. He's either crazy or he's alone or something else is going on. One note though is when you're framing this shot, there are a couple different ways to do this. You could either put your subject in the very center of the shot, or you can use the rule of thirds by doing 2 lines here and then 2 lines here and framing your shot with the subject on one of these 4 corners. More than likely, if you put him on one of these 2 corners right here, wherever they are. I have them circled right now, I know I do. If you put your subject on one of these 2 dots right here where the lines intersect, then that looks really cool. And I can't really explain why that looks cool. However, it's kind of a known filmmaking thing called a rule of thirds. It's not really a rule as much of a guideline because like I said before, you can put your subject in the very center and there are definitely ways and reasons you can do that. However, a lot of times if you want to find a unique way of framing your shot, put him in either the lower left side or the lower right side, and that way you really show a lot of empty space, which can really make the negative space side of this shot work. Because if you put your subject in the corner, then you have a much more space over here for him to look like he's lonely. Whereas if you have him in the middle of the shot, Yes, he's taking up the same amount of space. However, it looks like he's occupying this space differently, so he doesn't look as alone, in my opinion. However, I kind of did the opposite of this in this short film Coffee Break that I made, where I put one of the characters in the very center of the room, and that was absolutely the best way to go about doing it. So in that shot in particular, I feel like the character looked more lonely, and it also just made the shot look better. However, for this mustache short film, it made more sense for me to put him in the lower left-hand side. As a filmmaker, it's up to you to decide how you want to make your audience perceive the film, and it's up to you to decide what kind of camera angles you choose. There aren't always right or wrong answers in filmmaking, it's whatever you think and you can justify best in your film, and it really just takes practice for you to know exactly what you want to do. Guys, hey, hi, hello. Okay, I really don't know how to kind of make this segment in a video, but I wanted to let you guys know something kind of insane. Apparently, I have been nominated for the best local filmmaker for the Nappies. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's basically like an organization contest thing where you can vote for different people under different categories, and I've been nominated for best local filmmaker, which is actually kind of insane. The fact that a 19-year-old filmmaker who just graduated high school, I'm up against 5 other filmmakers, all who are like adults and have like production jobs. One of them, I think he's made like several million-dollar movies before. The fact that like I even got nominated is actually mind-blowing, and I'm so grateful for even that opportunity. But I could also like win this. I don't know what they're doing to kind of talk about it. I've been posting about it a little bit, but I just wanted to let you guys know that if you wanted to vote, you can actually vote once a day until I think the 1st of the next month. So I have about a month to get all my votes in. I'm not expecting all you guys to go in and vote every single day. However, there's a link in the description, and if you click that link, you can vote. It'll take like less than 2 minutes, but just voting even once, I would be so grateful for it. I'm not gonna take up any more of your time, but I just wanted to let you guys know, if you wanted to vote or maybe post about it or do whatever, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much. Also, if you don't want to vote for me, you could just subscribe, you know? Next up is leading lines. Now this shot is really cool, and you can use this in so many ways. You can basically use natural lines in your shot to help guide the audience's eyes to the subject. Now I couldn't find a way to use this in the mustache film because most of the film was shot outside, and there aren't a lot of natural horizontal or vertical lines outside. You obviously have trees with vertical, however with leading lines you need really straight lines to really guide your audience's eyes to the shot. So in the woods there aren't really ways to do that. However, I do have a lot of other examples of what this shot may look like. There's something that just seems satisfying about these shots, the way that your eyes are naturally drawn to the subject because of these lines. Even if you don't notice the lines naturally, which you're not even supposed to do, you subconsciously see them and your eyes are subconsciously drawn to the subject. And you don't have to just use the subject in the middle of the screen. You can put the subject anywhere and use the lines to guide the eyes to the subject. I just think that it adds a lot to the film, and I also think that it adds symmetry. It adds symmetry to the shot. Number 5. I call this the mirror frame shot. The way that this works is you take your camera and then you shine it in a reflective object. It's not always a mirror, however, a lot of times a mirror is the number one thing that you would think of. Basically, by doing this, it gives your audience a different way to look at your subject. Yes, obviously you can use a mirror. That's the go-to one that I think a lot of people use. I did that in the actual mustache short film, and I think that it worked really well. However, I also got a couple other examples as well. For instance, if you have a microwave in your short film, set the focus of your camera while pointing at the microwave to the character, but make sure that he's focused on the character just through the microwave screen. That did not make a lot of sense, but I think by looking at the shot, you can understand what I'm talking about. However, in reality, mirrors are the most common way to do this. If you think about it, I also used it in this shot here in the short film, which I really didn't even mean to, but now that I'm thinking about it, this is a mirror shot because I'm looking at my reflection through my phone. Either way, if you use this camera angle, it basically just makes the shot look more interesting because you're looking at the subject through the lens of something else, like a mirror or a microwave or a puddle or a phone. Okay, so obviously I didn't cover every single camera angle imaginable. These are just the 5 that stuck out to me that I tried to use in a short film, and I think you should do the same. I challenge you, try to make a short film with all of these camera angles. It's really difficult. You can also subscribe to me with this or watch this video right here about filmmaking. I also put a link in the description to vote for me for the Nappies. Even if you're not in my area, I would still really appreciate it if you were to vote. I think it would be so cool if a random 19-year-old filmmaker goes against actual filmmaking professionals and wins. That would just be the coolest thing ever. So it'll take 2 minutes and I would really appreciate it. With all of that out of the way, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. See you guys later.